Belief in witchcraft is universal. It has both negative and positive responses. In a neutral sense, witchcraft is sorcery, the magical manipulation of forces by casting spells and conjuring or invoking spirits. It has been used by humankind since prehistoric times in an effort to control the environment and enhance daily life. Throughout history, witches have been feared because they were believed to be evil, in consort with the devil, and able to fly through the night on a broomstick and shapeshift into magical creatures. The same women who were sought after, healers, midwives, the wise women and crones, for help were the ones who were also feared for their knowledge. In truth, witches are in tune with nature and with themselves. They are men and women who are dark and light, day and night, healer and justice all in one. To be a witch is to be a keeper of balance, the essential witch.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Essential Witch. I am your host, Ravenwings, and I am going to take you on a little journey tonight of Stregheria. And Stregheria, or also known as Strega, depends on what part of Italy you go into, because, you know, Italy is like French. And I'll use Canadian French as an example because I'm Canadian. The dialect is different in every household. Forget every town, it's every household. So Italy is very similar to that. So some people call their magic over there Stregheria, some people call it Strega. So this is what I'm going to cover tonight because I'm Italian and French. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of question and answer type of thing tonight for this, because a lot of people ask questions about Stregheria. It is a very old religion that was modernized when Christianity took over. Stregheria started taking over with a lot of the Christian symbolism as well, because it was a great way to hide the fact that you were a witch. You didn't want to be found out as a witch, so it was a great way to hide the fact of being a witch if you also worship the saints. So there's a lot of saint worship in Stregheria now. But Stregheria itself is an old religion of Italy. It's also called La Wicca religion. Stregheria is a blend of ancient Etruscan religion blended with Italian folk magic and very early rural Catholicism. Where did it originate from? Stregheria, or Strega, originated in the ancient Etruscan religion. Some of the modern systems of Stregheria have many elements of Tuscan peasant religion mixed in with material medieval Christian sects, especially ones involving the saint worshipping. To most Italian witches, the Catholic saints are nothing more than ancient pagan gods dressed up in Christian clothes. If you go to a house, you will always see the Virgin Mary as one of the examples. There is a kitchen witch that they use that is one of the saints. So they incorporated a lot of the early Christian symbolism. I actually got asked this question, so I figured I would put it up here. Is there an Archean system of Stregheria? And yes, there is. This tradition is known as the Archean ways, and it resembles the ancient European mystery teachings of pre-Christian Western civilization. The Archean tradition maintains the ancient ways, teaching and at the same time adapting it to modern times. So I actually got that question, so I figured I would put it in here because that way, you know, I got that answer in there for you. Now, Stregheria is different from Wicca, a lot different. Most people are most of the newer witches. Let me rephrase that. Most people who are new to the pagan traditions normally start with Wicca, and I would be the first to tell you I started in Wicca many years ago. I started in Wiccan and was Wiccan for about 3 years. Wiccan is a great way to start, and I've never knocked Wicca. Wicca is a great religion. It's very structured. I have a problem with structure. I just don't do well with structure. Growing up Roman Catholic with Latin Mass, I have an issue with structure. So structure is not good for me. Wicca is very structured. And with Stregheria, the Wheel of the Year are different than Wiccans. The rituals are very strict, but never taking away from the elements in the rites. They do the same elements of the Wiccan Wheel of the Year, but Wicca has a very stringent thing for that, where Stregheria not so much. So, and people have asked me, does Stregheria have dark or harmful magic? This is a loaded question for most people who are witches, because there is dark and light in everything. So this is a very loaded question, but because the Italian craft is old, there are some of it that could be called black or dark magic. This, however, is not used as an attack method, but more of a defense form. Binding magic is often used as a precaution when you feel that it's needed, and it's not intended for harm, but they do a lot of binding type magic and stuff like that. Is Stregheria a hereditary religion? Not at this modern stage. At the modern stage we are now, it's not hereditary anymore. Back in the ancient times, there were blood witches. They were known as blood witches, and these had been raised in tradition. Spouses were included if they were interested in the craft itself. If they were not, it was a clause to add outsiders into the clans as well. Do you have to be Italian to practice Stregheria or Strega? No. Well, it's not a requirement to be Italian. I'm lucky with the fact that I have the Italian blood, which I think helps with my cooking. But other than that, no. It is an open path of spiritualism. However, it does have the elements of the Italian ways. So some of the different things that you will do will be based on Italian traditions. Do you worship gods and goddesses? Yes. As with many other neo-pagan religions, Stregheria honors both male and female deities. So it's not one or the other, it is both. God is not a single parent. So typically personified, you would have your moon goddess and your horn god. The principal names for the goddess and god is Uni and Tagni. However, there are other Stregheria in Italy who do not follow tradition, who may worship the other gods and goddesses. There are always more gods and goddesses out there. Does gender or sexual preference make a difference? And this is a big question for these days because, with, transgender and gay and lesbian and, all this other stuff we got going on and churches segregating that. No. This is not a discrimination religion, this form of religion, and it is a form of religion. So I want to make that abundantly clear. Where witchcraft is not, Stregheria is a form of religion. Outside of the religion, some practitioners occasionally use sex magic with willing participants under mutual and free consent. Minors are not allowed to be present or, participate in any of these rituals that involves nudity, sexuality, or sensuality. So they do have some adult rituals that they do. Stregheria is something, if you wanted to find a specific god or goddess to worship, this would work with it if you wanted to go into the Italian way. I know of this religion because I studied it for a while and I considered it. But to be technically honest, and with everybody here, I do not have a specific path religion in paganism. I don't. I worship whatever gods or goddess that I need at the time, and I work mostly with elements, and fairy magic and stuff like that. So I can't really say. If I do work with the gods, my normal god and goddess that I work with are Diana and Pan, which are Celtic. So because those were the ones that have called to me. But I've used Isis in rituals. I've used other gods and goddesses in rituals that I've needed at the time. So, or, wanted to include. Let me rephrase that. It's not a need. You want to include them at the time. And I don't worship gods or goddesses either. I believe that we're all on the same level. We are all our own goddess and our own god. So, in that respect, that is my version of it. So, but I want to be able to open everybody's mind to all different forms, because I've never just said, no, I won't do that because of that. I try to look totally into whatever path it is and see all of it. Because you know what, just because it's not my path doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't go, hey, you know what, that sounds exactly like what I need in my life. And that's the path I want to follow. And that's what I try to do. I try to keep it open enough to where others can find their own path and their own direction on where they want to go. So, but that's that. Do you have to be in a coven? That's another question I've gotten with Stregheria. No, you do not. You can be a solitary practitioner. There is no coven in Stregheria. A group of witches who join together for worship, study, or fellowship, numbering from 3 to 13, is called a bichetto. It's not called a coven. It's just a group of people getting together, and it's called a bichetto. So, now I want to get into a little bit of the history and general information. Stregheria is an Italian meaning religion of witches. Generally and specifically refers to sorcery or magical practices of witches that opposite their religion. Italian witchcraft is one of the oldest forms of European witchcraft, and second only to Greek, mentioned by Homer and Hesiod, I believe it was, in the 8th century BCE. It is also maybe noted that Greek fable of Medea, which was the priestess of Hecate, is the first reference to witches in a religious content. So Hecate is one of your oldest gods as well. Well, goddesses, let me rephrase that. So yeah, she's one of the oldest that they've come to know too. And it may also be noted in some of the earlier references to witch in the regions current known as Italy, which dates back to around 30 BCE, where in poetry of the Roman poet Horace, even though note writing kindly of witches he ascribed to them as the power to draw down the moon from the sky, he notes that they worship Diana in certain ceremonies at night, and mention a witch's book of incantations called the Libros Carminium, or the Book of Chants. Other writers of that era, such as Ovid and Lucran, noted Hecate, Persephone, and Diana as being worshipped by the Italian witches as well. And most of your goddesses or gods, if this is the one that you're supposed to be around at the time, they will come to you. You can't seek them out. They find you. In the third volume of Folklore Transitions of the Folklore Society, which was published back in March of 1897, author J.B. Andrews described Neapolitan witchcraft, stating that the witches of Nepal were divided into special departments of the art. He listed 2 as adepts in the art of earth and sea magic, and later a third is implied a specialty possibly existing related to the stars. Andrews also wrote that these Neapolitan witches preferred not magic, which not spells have been around forever, created magical, medical, herbal potions, constructed protective amulets, and engaged in the arts of healing, which we all know healing's been out there since, witches have been out there, so. Andrews concluded in his work with information which he had collected from interviewing Italian witches. When asking what books their knowledge was gathered from, the witches informed them that it was mostly oral, given from mother to daughter, which is the way most traditions were done, which is why we don't have as great a history about witchcraft as we would love to have. The witches also told Andrews that blood is exchanged from a vein in the arm, and a new member is given a mark under their left thigh. Although the moon was not specifically mentioned in by the witches told Andrews, they performed such ceremonial magic at midnight. Italian witchcraft differs from region to region, just like dialect. Traditions and roots in the north tend to originate from the ancient Etruscan religion. Those in central Italy are more likely to be a combination of medieval magic and Italian paganism. And in southern Italy, the more rural forms of witchcraft tend to be more prevalent down there. Sicilian witchcraft is probably one of the latest altered forms of Italic witchcraft because it is relatively insular nature as an island. Its greater external influence came from the Spanish occupation, so although there are some arguments for the influence of the Moors. So Sicilian witchcraft is completely different than any other witchcraft there. The ancient roots of Stregheria, the old religion, are not necessarily attached strictly to Italy either. Since the Streg tradition comes from the Etruscan religion, it could very well have been Neolithic, and it certainly would have been a goddess worship tradition. Some modern forms of versions of Stregheria are a combination of the medieval elements with the elements of the Tuscan peasant religion and saint worship. So it tends to be a whole melting pot, similar to hoodoo in America. Hoodoo in America has, different aspects of it because we brought so many people here as slaves. Their traditions came over from different countries. You had Celts that were here, you had people from South America that were here, from Asia that were here, and their traditions tended to blend. And a lot of the hoodoo that you find today, not voodoo, but hoodoo that you find today comes from that blending of many, many traditions. That's kind of the same way with the Italian Stregheria. There's been so much blending over the years that, and being that everything was verbal and not written down, it's very hard and difficult to figure exactly what the old true religion was. And it is reasonable that Catholic saint worship appeared during the Inquisition period as a veneer. When they did the Inquisition, we in America think that, oh my God, the Salem witch trials were horrible. The Salem witch trials were nothing. They killed hundreds of thousands of people across the ocean. We got very little of that. Not that we didn't get any of it, but we did get very little of it compared to the amount of people that were killed during the witch trials in the Inquisition time. To the point of where you can combine all the wars that we have now with all the loss of lives now, and it still doesn't reach the amount of people that we killed for claiming to be a witch or for saying that they were a witch. So yeah, the witch trials and the Inquisitions over there were much, much more harsh than they were here. The true adherents of Stregheria were not willing to abandon their goddesses, such as Diana, Arcadia, and Demeter, who had been their benefactors for centuries. So with the emergence of Catholicism, to them the Virgin Mary was an incarnation goddess of Diana. Even many Catholic priests did this for the same reason. Resurrection of Jesus represented the resurrection of Persephone or Osiris. The old religion never died, it just kind of hid and continued serving its believers. It exhibits itself today while many are not yet sure of the safety of their practices, this old religion in traditional form. So a lot of people in Italy who are still Stregheria witches will be the same ones who go to church every day because they don't want to be found out to this day. The hysteria of witchcraft possession came later to Italy and was less intense than other parts of Europe, although records of hangings and burnings do exist, and the most common punishments were flogging, 6 months of imprisonment, and banishment. The Italian inquisitioners seemed more interested in repentant peasants than executions. Since these remain major factors, these remained a large prevalence of knowledge of Italian witchcraft that was passed on to future generations. The magical focus of the Tuscan witches was mainly on spells, natural objects, and omen. Tremendous usage of amulets, charms bags, talisman, and of course plenty of divination and incantations occurred. It may be recognized that Italian witchcraft, like all other types of witchcraft, is rooted in early human development, where the ancestors believed that a consciousness or a spirit was within all things. In Italy, this was known as numen, since it was the numen that gave power to all forms in nature, along with elemental spirits, objects. It also took on a great importance. Ritual circles were seldom used for casting magic or spells, and the preference was for a large flat rock in a field, which was used as a type of altar for power objects. The primary tool of Tuscan witch was her wand, which would be passed over these objects with a ritual gesture followed by metered tonal chanting. The traditional deities of the Tuscan witch are the god Tagni, T-A-G-N-I, and the goddess Uni, who ruled over hierarchy of spirits who exerted influence over the earth. The old religion upheld by the Tuscan relates to the universe. Ruled by these deities is comprised of 16 houses, with 4 of these houses in each of the 4 quarters. Their religion is almost like an astrology chart, to a point. It's really interesting if you can get into it. In the north dwelled the gods of destiny. In the east dwelled the major gods. In the south, the astral entities, and the west was the dwellings that beheld the underworld. Elemental beings called Pala ruled the north quarter, considered a place of great power. Air spirits called Valari ruled the east corner, and fire spirits called Setano ruled the south corner, and water spirits called Mene ruled the west quarter, along with the Lhasa, who are spirits connected to the underworld. And these beings were highly important since it is believed that their interaction, vegetation flourishes, the rains fall, life cycle continues. They are in fact the inner forces of nature. Some of the other prominent spirits are Tumaro. He was a messenger spirit. Lasana, he was the spirit of the moon. Turuna, who governs affairs of the hearts. The Fani and the Silvani, spirit of the woods. The Manachito, I'm probably screwing that name up because that one's a hard one for me, but Manachito, he was a gnome-like spirit, and the Lenchito, who are the elven spirits. These spirits are deities that are evoked for a multitude of purposes, including cures and rites, attracting love, rites for banishing evil, and acts for assuring comfort. They're still part of mundane life in Tuscany, more so than other craft religions. As with all crafts, the basic elemental forces are revered and living entities are associated with magical properties of the elements. So they do a lot of elemental fairy type magic, because as we all know, gnomes go into the fairyland, which is part of Celtic. And if you really actually do sit down and decide to study paganism and religion itself, in general, religion itself, you will find an extreme amount of crossover between every religion into the next, whether it's paths of paganism or different branches of Catholicism. There are a lot of intersecting branches and paths that do combine in all. So it's not to say that anybody has the one truth. We all have the truth. It's just finding what is our truth that is the part that we need to look for. There are many different types of spirits in Italian folklore. Almost all Strega believe in the lair. This was known earlier as the Lhasa, who protects the homes and the family and preserves the bloodline of the Strega. And the lair shriers are often set up in the east or west part of the home, and the Folletto, also known as the Basadon, the woman kissers, are travelers of the wind and a mischievous lot who like to take particular interest in sexual situations. The Lincetto, a race of night elves, are said to cause nightmares. Fata are gentle and kind of shapeshifters who test human kindness and reward it. And the Larue, another mischievous lot who is threatened with respect, will reveal treasure or even winning lottery numbers. So a lot of the history that goes behind the Strega has a lot to do with different kinds of fey magic. Now, in Italy, the word Sabbat is not used for seasonal rites. The Italian word is Trungenda. I'm probably killing this too. Yeah, I'm so sad to say that I'm Italian. It's Treguenda. It has its root word from trigu, meaning respect, of truce or truce. Contemporary Italian word Trigenda means quarterly, so it's used to see the relationship between Sabbats as their period of time of rest. So it's, it's different words, same meaning type of thing. There are 4 major and 4 minors, just like you would find in Wiccan, Sabbats of the Wheel. The minor rites occur on the spring and autumn and the summer and winter solstice. Spring and autumn equinox, summer and winter solstice. There are earth festivals that are seasonal. They're agricultural in nature. Many people believe ritual observance at these times are Celtic in origin. However, these observances were observed in ancient Rome times in southern Europe as well. So it's yet and again another crossover. For our Samhain, for the Americans, it's much easier to say Samhain. People will know, oh, okay, you mean Halloween. Yeah. Theirs is La Festa del Ambra, which is Shadow Fest, and that's done on October 31st, and that's a celebration of procreation. So yeah, that's a happy Sabbath. La Festa del Inverno is the winter solstice, which lasts December 21st, 22nd. This is the birth of the sun god from the union in Shadowfest, a celebration of light and hope and promise. Fiesta de Luprus is February 2nd. This is the celebration of purification and the beginning of fertility, the puberty of sun god. Equinoccio della Primavera is spring equinox. This is held normally March 21st or March 22nd. The celebration of the ascendant of the goddess from the underworld realm of shadows and the awakening of fertility. La Giornata di Tania, and it comes out more Spanish than Italian. I have no idea why it does that, but that's Tanya's Day. This is May 1st, the celebration of the return of the goddess to the world of life and the fulfillment of fertility. Les Festes del Estat is the summer solstice, June 21st or 22nd, depending on the year. That is the marriage of the god and goddess and the celebration of life and growth. La Festa di Cornucopia. The Cornucopia is August Eve. This is a celebration of plenty and harvest. The god is preparing to sacrifice himself for the world to continue. The Equinoccio di Autunno is the autumn equinox, September 21st, 22nd, and that is the celebration of the harvest. The god dies and departs to the underworld, and the goddess descends to seek her lost lover. Following that, I'm going to give you some information of some of the tools that they use in Italian witchcraft, Stregheria, or Streg, as you want to call it. The wand. The wand itself is a big tool for them. It is made from a branch of a fruit-bearing tree, although oak or willow is also acceptable. When the desired tree is chosen, an offering is poured or placed before the tree before sunrise. The spirit of the tree, its numen, must be respectfully addressed with a disclosure of plans. Unless it is felt that the tree spirits reject these plans, a branch should be secured quickly and wrapped in a cloth and taken home. The branch should be trimmed and all the bark removed. The tip should be fashioned into a smooth phallus shape. The wood must be allowed to dry for 9 days before carving or painting any symbols on it. Carving and or painting is only done on the night of a full moon. The wand is then presented to the east quarter and declared to be a wand of magic with power over the element of air. They are very particular, I would say, about their wands, and they are very particular about that. The bowl. This is another big tool used in Stregheria. This was originally a large shell, so either can be used. If a bowl is used, a seashell can be placed in the bowl, or seashells can be placed around the bowl, forming a crescent shape to represent the power of the moon. In the old days, seawater was poured in the bowl, but in contemporary clans, an alcoholic liquid such as Strega liqueur, and yes, there is such a thing as Strega liqueur, and it's really good, just so you know, is used and lighted in a ceramic bowl, minus the seashell. The bowl is placed in the center of the altar, and once the flame has been established, it's considered to be the presence of the deity for the ritual. The bowl symbolizes a state of existence between matter and spirit. The chalice, your cup, or your grail, whatever you're calling it, has womb associations and is the vessel of transformation and carries the essence of the divine from which all are nourished. The chalice serves as a connection to the source of our existence on earth, as does the bowl. The spirit blade. This is probably one of the most common tools of the crafts. In other crafts, it's called an athame or an athame, depending on where you come from. There are old rituals and new rituals for blade preparation. The pentacle, in its original form, was a flat rock used to mark the center of a sacred space. Later, the rock was engraved with etchings to denote the 4 cardinal points comprising the space. Since the ancients believed rock contained a spirit, that resulting pentacle represented the 4 elements of creation, held in balance by the spirit of nature. Later pentacles were made from sacred woods associated with different deities. The pentacle can be made from any substance and bears a pentagram on its surface. The pentacle does not require any special preparation once the pentagram has been set upon it, but a general blessing and anointing with names of the gods and goddesses seems to be more empowering. Secondary tools. All right, these are tools that they might possibly use. This includes a nata bag. This is a carrier for tools and the enforcer of harmony with nature. Brooms work for protection and banishment. Scissors are spell breakers and severs of magical and astral connections. Cauldrons were considered for offerings, and a lair house or a lassa shrine, which would be an altar, for celebrations of birthdays, marriages, and any other event that called for lightings of candles. Lastly, I wanted to touch on some of the goddesses and gods that are worshipped in this form of religion. And not to be biased, I am going to start with gods because it's just easier. Different gods and different goddess names, they may seem very familiar to a path that you follow, just with a different name. Because like I've said before, most of this stuff overlaps. We have tree branches running over tree branches and paths crossing paths. So, they will sound a lot alike. Like I deal with the god Pan. In Stregheria, it's Actaeon, Actaeon. Let's hope I pronounced it right. That is the stagged horn god of the forest, which is very similar to the Celtic god of Pan. Antares is the god of passion. He represents mutual love and was sometimes regarded as the avenger of slighted love. Comus. This was the god of revelry, of feasting, of drinking. He was the party god and the pleasures of the night. So he was the real party god. Corvus. This was the messenger of the gods. He was also a trickster god known as Raven. And if you go into some of the Celtic mythology too, you'll hear of a raven trickster god as well. Cern, or Kern, depending on how it's been spelled. It's C-E-R-N or K-E-R-N. This was the name for the stagged horn god of the forest, also very similar to Pan. The symbol of the waxing power of nature is what this god was. Dianus was the consort of the goddess Diana, nature god of fertility. He was similar to Faunus, except that he is a stag god instead of a goat god. Also known as Kern, Dianus is the most common name for the god worshipped in Stregheria. Faunus was the consort of Fauna. He was also a nature god of fertility, similar to Pan, and he's worshipped at Lupercali. Phoebus is the god of purification and initiation. Tagni, T-A-G-N-I, the most ancient name for the god of witchcraft. He was the ultimate god. He was like the Greek god of mythology, Zeus. He was the alpha male out of all of that. Tanus was the consort of Tana, the star god. He was the universal aspect, the great god, who is all gods. He was also right up there. Terminus is the god of boundaries, protector of personal property. So if you're doing a personal property protection spell where you're trying to protect your home and you're using Stregheria and you want to call on a god for that, that would be the god you would call on. Vibius was the god of outcasts and outlaws, guardian of sanctuaries. So if you were the black sheep of the family, that's the god you would turn to. Now I'm going to go over some of the goddesses. Stera. Stera is the goddess of justice and purity. Just that. Purity and justice. That's all she was good for. I was like, that's really sad, because if you ever read up on this goddess, she's actually a really cool goddess to read up on. So if you ever get a chance to read up on goddesses, check out Stera. She's really cool. Carmen, or Carmina, was the goddess of casting spells and of enchantments, possibly related to Carmenta, who is the Camian. This goddess dwelt in the free water springs and rivers. Their name means foretellers, for they were like a prophetic force. These were your goddesses to call on for prophecies. Carmitia is the goddess of prophecy and midwifery. She also brought the art of writing to her land. She was worshipped from January 11th to the 15th, and the 15th, and she would consult to foretellers the future of newborns. So if you were a fortune teller and you were seeking advice about a newborn, that would be the goddess to go to. Diana is the consort of Dianus. She is also the triad goddess, the maiden mother crone. Diana encompasses many other goddesses and is the name used for the moon goddess, the earth goddess, and the star goddess, and this has been the goddess that has come to me. Just as Hecate is a three-stage goddess. Diana is also a three-stage goddess as well. Hecate is an awesome goddess to check out too. I absolutely recommend that. Originally, Diana was the queen of the open sky, and she was worshipped only outdoors where her domain stretched overhead. She is the goddess of outcasts, outlaws, slaves, and oppressed people. With two other deities, she made up another trinity. Stregheria, the water nymph, her servant and assistant midwife, and Viberus, the mysterious woodland god. The three lived together in the famous woods of Nimir near Arica. She is worshipped on August 15th, which conveniently now is the Feast of Assumption of Mary. So if you follow Catholicism or Catholic religion or Christianity, the Feast of Assumption of Mary is August 15th. Processions of women would journey to Archaea to offer thanks in Diana's grove for help that year to implore her conjuring aid. Diana is the goddess of all witches in Italy. Fauna or Faina is the consort of Phanes, the goddess of the earth and fertility. Faina is also known as Bonadi, or the good goddess. She was also worshipped only by women and utter secrecy and rites in early December. Goddess of abundance and prosperity, the rites were rather bawdy, usually ending in orgies, yet no men were ever allowed to enter those rites. Fortuna, the goddess of fortune, fate, and luck. She controlled the destiny of every human being, the energy that drove men and women to reproduce themselves. She was the goddess of she who brings, the goddess who permitted the fertilization of humans, animals, and plants. She was involved by newly married couples who dedicated their virgin garments to her. Jana, which was the consort of Janus, goddess of the moon and of the mysteries of the moon. Nox was the goddess of night. Nox rules the darkness which falls upon the earth and all within it. She's the sister of Umbria and shares her associations, except for the underworld connection. Nox can be a bit on the sinister side if care is not taken. Pertunda is the goddess of sexual love and pleasure. Tana is the consort of Tanis, the star goddess. She is a universal aspect. Tana's day is celebrated on May 1st, this day upon which she returned to her hidden children after her time in the underworld. Interesting enough, Tana is the Hindu star goddess as well. Umbra is the goddess of the shadows, and she is the darker aspect of the goddess, the waning moon. And she rules with Dis in the underworld. She is the goddess of things which are hidden or secret. And Una, the most ancient name in all of the goddesses of witchcraft, queen of the sky. She hurled thunderbolts when she was angry, and when pleased, granted safe passage to infants at their birth. Her major sanctuary was at Pirge, a port city of Seir, where she was endowed with silver and gold by her worshippers, benefactors of Tuscan cities, and all of the women who lived there. They worshipped her. She was the shiznit, so to speak. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about this, and the reason that I do these shows the way that I do is because I don't want to give you too much information. I want you guys to go out there, and if something has interested you, has piqued your interest, check it out. Find books, get on the internet, do what you have to do to find out any information about anything that I give you on here. I want this show to be, if anything, something that is a show of knowledge, and it's a show of wanting more knowledge. You know, I heard that on Ravenwing's show, and I want to check that out because that sounds really cool. You know, or whatever the case may be. Open your minds, because knowledge is power. And the reason that I do what I do is so that you guys do that. I want you to hunt, and I want you to search, and I want you to find, and I want you to find it on your own. I'll give you a push, and I can point you in the right direction, but to learn all this stuff, if you truly, truly, truly want to follow any path, whether it's Christian path, whether it's pagan path, no matter what path you're trying to find in life, you really, really, really need to read and learn and ask questions. You want to ask those questions. Those questions need to be asked, and find the people that can give you answers. And if you've asked somebody and they can't give you an answer, don't let it get you down. Find somebody else. I'm the type of person, if you ask me a question and I have no idea, I'll find somebody who can answer it for you. So ask the questions, take the time to learn. Witchcraft is not all that you see in the movies and on TV, and you can't twinkle your nose. I wish I could, because I need a cleaning fairy right now. So if anybody has a cleaning fairy they would like to loan me, because my fairies do not clean. They hide stuff and they tease the heck out of the cat, but they do not clean. So if anybody wants to loan me a cleaning fairy, I'd be happy to take it. I will warn you, I have dust bunnies that might hurt it, but they're under the bed, so I can hope that it'll make it through. But do take all this knowledge and use it. Spend the time looking. There's so much out there now that we didn't have before. There's a lot on the internet, there's a lot in books, there's a lot everywhere. But don't just take one book and say, oh, I know everything now, because you will find another book or another internet article or another person that's going to give you a totally different view of it. Read as much as you can, learn as much as you can before you make a decision to follow any path. This is why I say I walk a crooked path. My crooked path is ever changing. My path changes every single day. Every single day I try to learn something new. Trust what your gut is telling you, because that is intuition. Whether you want to believe it or not, that is your intuition. When your gut says something, some people will say, well, it's the devil on my left shoulder and the angel on my right. That's all fine and dandy. It's still your gut intuition. Something's not right, then, maybe you should check into something else or double check your facts. Just don't always assume that you always have the answer. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it is true. That is my show for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it with Stregheria or Strega, whichever you want to call it. You can check into it. There is a lot of information out there. Raven Grimassi actually writes some amazing books about Stregheria if you are interested in looking into that. Thanks everybody for coming in and listening.